Welcome to the live reaction show. Let's get this guy going. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hey, we got to talk about this restart that was going on. And yet I agree with it. I think it's good for safety. But then there's one thing that I don't agree with it. So first off, let me just show it to you in Peacock. I know, hey, here we got to hit here. Live show, share screen. Bear with me. Screen number 2. Boom. Boom. Okay, there's the rules. Let's look at this bad boy if it loads. This, I honestly think, was well done. Besides the potential to have the race director, or at least the individual that is looking at the gates, he could potentially trip. And if he trips, that could potentially ruin the race of everybody. However, maybe have a drone do it. Maybe have a rubber band do it. Maybe, I don't know, have some sort of a light system. I think a light system is probably better because this is a little mediocre with this because there is potential for human error. And whenever there's potential for human error, that ends up being a problem because humans tend to make errors. We know I make considerable amount of errors at time, and having maybe a little 50, but then again, they could crash into that. I really think a light system is probably the way to go. But I do think that this was the better of what I have seen before. And like, truthfully, in Supercross, I think the restart should be this way as well, being back on the gate and do just that rather than the staggered start. And maybe the staggered start works better, but if I'm looking at the rules with this amount of riders, I truthfully think that, yeah, it makes sense to me. Okay. However, the last thing that I don't is scoring will be reverted to the last lap completed. And what happened with Sexton is he, I believe, was above Hunter when he crossed the finish line. And so therefore that lap should have counted. But I believe on the broadcast, they said that they had the red flag out that lap. So therefore it doesn't really count. Which I thought that would be interesting. And you guys are saying that rubber band wouldn't work as intentional. Yeah, that's why I think there should have been lights. Lights should do it because we all know that, you know, the motorcycles themselves, at least in Supercross, have lights on them, but it is in the sun. So that would make it difficult. The only thing that I could say that this could have gone wrong is if this individual tripped. If he tripped, it would have been SOL for the entire field, and it wouldn't have made sense. And people argue about how the restart shouldn't have really happened. But again, we're about safety. And what has happened in this community? Well, unfortunately, we've had 6+ riders die over the last year, 12 months, and we don't want to see that. So when they do put a restart and a red flag out there, I say advise on the side of caution 1000 effing%. I think it could be implemented a little bit different, but I'm digressing. I'm kind of saying it over and over again. So I'd like to know what you guys think as well. But if I'm moving on to the race itself, usually this track ends up being one line and very tight, and also hard to pass because there's lots of shadows. And when it's dug deep, it makes it harder to pass. So I would almost rather this track be not dug as deep and to where there was more flat areas, more berms. Yeah, it's not as technical for the riders, but it creates more passing for the riders. We have seen it deeper in years past, and it just makes for slot car racing, especially with shadows, which is no fun to watch. There was a little bit of passing going on. However, that second moto before the restart, those guys were right there. You had a 4-way battle, which was fun to see. And then after the restart, it sort of just became a one line. Just Sexton doesn't want to pass Jett because he knows that he still gets the overall, and Tomac was riding better, but everyone was just stuck in their deal. If I talk about a little bit about Tomac before I talk about Sexton, is from last weekend at Millville to this weekend, the suspension looks 1000% better. 1000% better. And why does it sound so much better? Well, it sounds so much better, looks so much better, because it is. He literally said, I believe it was a Vital or no, I need to give credit where credit is due, but I don't remember where I saw the interview. But the interview was that they changed the suspension before Millville, and now they reverted back, and it looks great. Truthfully, it seems like a lot of guys are almost running some softer stuff because Jett wasn't nearly on fire. I know it sounds sort of like hypocrisy that maybe everyone is on to what Jett and Hunter have with their bikes, or maybe it was just the track itself. I don't know. But it seemed like Sexton's motorcycle was working really well. Tomac's motorcycle was working really well. And you know who didn't have the better advantage? The Honda boys. I will say that the Honda still looked faster. So you need to pay attention to the video on Tuesday that I'm going to look at some of the lines, because I did see something that was interesting that I want to share with you guys. But Jett did not run away from this. And is he managing the series? Because he really doesn't have to hunt down Sexton, because Sexton is outside of the top 10. And it's very interesting that Sexton is outside of the top freaking 10 when he's the only other rider to win a moto. He is the only rider to pass Jett. It was only briefly, but well, I guess they're the only brand to pass Jett. It's that KTM with AP. Well, AP's now heard, so Sexton is on board. And it still baffles me that Sexton is going from a winning performing motorcycle to a dog shit bike at the moment. Yeah, I say it for what it is. The Kawasaki's, Prado's not making it look good. And I think it's the package. Jason Anderson wasn't doing good with the bike. And yeah, he looks like he's gained weight, and there's been some other complications going on. He's no longer here. He may be going to club. I don't know. But the truth is in the pudding, I guess you say. And that bike is not looking good. It maybe be fast, but the whole setup isn't going good, because Prado was up front both motos and wasn't able to do anything. And I still find it very hard to believe that a world champion like that is struggling so hard unless he has inferior equipment. And that's just where I'm going with it. Maybe Jett and these other guys have some sort of trophy truck telemetry where it is constantly just adjusting the valving in it, you know, doing something, at least the clickers on rebound and dampening, whatever, on the fly, because they couldn't really change the valving, because that's what it is. But you get my point. However, I will say that Sexton moving from the winning proving motorcycle to Kawasaki may be detrimental, especially when Tomac moves from a decent package with the Yamaha to a also pretty good package with KTM. I still think that Honda is the premier motorcycle right now. It hasn't been for a while, but it is. And they have some of the talented guys on there as well. But this was a huge moment for Sexton, a huge moment for Sexton to just get that confidence back. And Sexton is not one of those guys that you let him get a roll with confidence, because usually he's the guy that will shoot himself in the foot because of confidence. So if he gets on a roll, it could be bad. And he's basically proven. And at the end of the second moto, he goes up to Jett like, hey, I didn't have to catch you. I knew I still won, but I knew I could hang with you, and you didn't beat me the first moto. So he has so much to build off of. Yet Jett, the other argument is he's a full race ahead of everybody. Why ride at 100%, which he sort of proved that he was riding at 100% that first moto, because he crashed. Was he running the scoop tire? I don't know. If it was the scoop tire, if I would have been able to go there, you could have seen the sidewalls, and there's hardly any sidewall knobbies on those paddle tires. But Deegan and Tomac, they effing love that tire for some godful reason, even though this track was much drier, and just not one of my favorite tracks, just because of how deep it gets in the shadows. The shadows don't make it for as appetizing for passing. But yeah, we still had some pretty good battles, which was cool. But if I talk about Tomac, his speed is relatively there. Okay, a 2.3, that's pretty damn good. Pretty damn good. Do I expect more out of Tomac? Yes, we all do, because it's Tomac. But if he gets onto the KTM, we will see what happens. Hunter, it's kind of coulda, woulda, shoulda with Hunter. That's where this thing where he's just always second best, and it's difficult to see where he can improve. I still believe that he should get on a different team, because you guys know my feelings about it. Just try something different, because you can learn from Jett, but at the same time, you need to try different things. You're never going to beat Jett if you just keep following what he's doing, confidence-wise, everything, right? And you guys are talking about the red flag kind of being insane. Yeah, there's the argument that it shouldn't have happened, but at the same time, I'm going to lead towards, hey, safety, because there has been so much stuff. And like you guys are saying, I do like how they did the restart, besides the fact of potentially this guy falling over and taking other guys with him, which would be bad. And there's not much else to say about the 450s. If I move on to the 250s, dude, Deegan, Joe won by 20 seconds that second moto. Woo. And you notice he's wearing both handguards, which I'm glad that he's wearing both freaking handguards. And I was honestly thinking that this was going to be a boring rest of the season, but Joe is giving us hope. The other Honda rider, ironically, because I believe that the 450 package is by far a better improvement than the 250, because the Yamahas, I think, on the 250s are the best motorcycle of the team. They have the most advantage over every other freaking team. The team that seems that they have struggled in the past has been the Triumph guys, but those guys have been somewhat improving. Besides Smith hasn't been improving. I'm probably the most impressed with Forner by going 5.5 coming through the field, where at the beginning of the season he was 22nd. And when I talked to him, he told me that it's a new bike, new team, and they're struggling with it. But when you have other guys showing up like Harrop that are in third place for the majority of the race, it's not a good look for you. So maybe he's got some indications that he might not have a ride next year, which would suck, but you couldn't fault Triumph for that. It's going to light a fire under his butt. And you also know what he's been through with the brain surgery and being very close to Jerry Robin. You could definitely see all of that stuff coming into a factor. And besides Forner, Joe is sort of a season that coulda, woulda, shoulda been, because this is where Joe should have been at the beginning of the motocross season. And honestly, he should have won the series in Supercross. And that brings more of another conversation about why, at least for the pit boards, they should have raised pit boards, almost like in street bike racing, or just have radio communication, because he should have never broke his hand by hitting a pit board in Supercross, plain and simple. But it's nice to see that he has found his stripes and he could contend with Deegan, not to win the championship. I don't think that's going to happen, but at least some more wins, which would be exponential and very important for that Honda squad. And also just for the fan viewership to be able to see that as well. But you know what, guys? There is a UFC fight that is going on right now. And I have a bunch of people upstairs that were waiting for me to start it. So I'm going to go do that. But thank you for joining the live show. Until next time, keep it WFO. I know it was a short one. Just bear with me. Baby shower today. And that's why I wasn't at Washougal.